Welcome in, everyone. We're diving into the world of Susan Jane Gilman today. We've got some audio from her book, Kiss My Tiara. And, well, let me tell you, this is not your average self-help book. It's about female empowerment. but
Oh, it is definitely not your typical book. You're right. She's got such a unique voice.
Yeah.
So funny. And
Yeah, and she really doesn't hold back.
no, she does not.
Like right away, she's taking on these norms, these expectations, like the whole thing about how men can just order a cheeseburger,
Right.
but women feel like they have to overthink every single item on the menu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dissect every ingredient, apologize for even being hungry.
Makes sense.
They're like, come on, I just want a sandwich. But she's getting at something deeper with that example, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about how women are conditioned to kind of question their desires, even when it comes to something as basic as food.
And it doesn't stop there, right? She goes on to talk about how even families, supposed to be your support system can actually...
Yeah, you'd think they'd be the ones encouraging you the most.
You would think so.
But she's saying they can actually reinforce these limiting gender roles.
Oh, yeah. She's got this quote. I love it. She says, "The people who share our home can do more damage to a girl's sense of personal power than all those fart bags at the Heritage Foundation combined."
Oh, that's classic Gilman.
Isn't it? It's funny, but she's making a serious point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It makes you think about how we can challenge those norms, even within our own families, without starting World War III at the dinner table.
Right. Well, her advice, and she's very straightforward about this, is be a smartass.
Yeah, use that wit.
Yeah. Use humor, push back against those expectations. She even gives some great comebacks, for those classic family criticism.
Like when your grandma tells you you're wearing too much makeup or something.
Oh, yeah. Or asks when you're finally going to settle down and get married.
Exactly. Gilman gives you permission to stand up for yourself.
With a smile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without, ruining Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly. Okay, now this is where Gilman gets really interesting. She talks about using shopping skills as a model for life.
That sounds a little out there.
It does, doesn't it? But her logic is fascinating.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So she says women are already expert shoppers, right? We're good at making decisions.
Budgeting, comparing prices.
Oh, yeah, and haggling for a bargain.
Oh, absolutely.
And she says those skills are valuable in other areas of life, like finance, relationships, even careers.
So, like, instead of being intimidated by Wall Street,
Exactly.
she's saying, think of it as just another shopping mall.
Yes. She even says she gets the same thrill from buying stocks as she does from buying nail polish.
Okay, well, maybe not the same thrill, but I get her point,
Yeah.
It's about not being afraid to engage with those things that have traditionally been seen as, men's territory.
Exactly. And it's not just about money either. She talks about applying the cost per wear concept to relationships.
Interesting. So, like, figuring out if you're getting a good return on your emotional investment.
Exactly. Are you putting your time and energy into relationships that are actually fulfilling? It's a really interesting way to look at it.
It is. It makes you think about your priorities and where you're really putting your energy.
And speaking of priorities, let's talk about Gilman's career advice. She's got a really realistic take on this, especially for women in their 20s.
Yeah, she acknowledges that it's a time for exploration and, you don't necessarily have to have it all figured out right away.
Right. It's about gaining experience, figuring out what you're good at, what you enjoy.
Exactly. And she emphasizes the importance of networking.
Yes. Thinking outside the box when it comes to job hunting.
And she tells this funny story about her cousin, who is super successful in her field, calling her for advice on what color nail polish to wear to a grant meeting.
Oh, I love that story. What was her advice?
I don't remember the exact color. But the point is, it highlights how much of career success can depend on these unspoken rules, these social cues.
Like there's a secret playbook that nobody gives you.
Exactly.
So how do you navigate that?
Well, Gilman's advice is assess, then impress.
Okay, break that down for me.
So it's about observing the workplace dynamics, understanding the culture, and then figuring out how to make your mark strategically.
So it's not about trying to make a big splash right away.
Not necessarily. It's more about playing the long game, understanding the rules of the game before you start making moves. And that actually brings us to another point that Gilman makes about the gender pay gap.
Ugh, yes. The pay gap. Still an issue.
Unfortunately, yes. And she tells this story about a school headmistress who admitted to paying men more simply because they asked.
Oh, come on. Seriously.
That is so frustrating.
It is. And Gilman argues that a lot of it comes down to how women are socialized. We're taught to undervalue ourselves, especially when it comes to money.
So how do we break free from that?
Well, this is where Gilman gets really radical. She suggests applying relationship advice tactics to salary negotiations.
Okay, hold on. Relationship advice, like what does that even mean?
So she says things like, try acting aloof and mysterious. Let the employer make the first move on salary. And hold back a little to see if they'll sweeten the deal. Wait, so it's like playing hard to get in a job interview.
Kind of. I know it sounds crazy,
It
but
does sound a little counterintuitive.
it does.
Uh-huh.
But Gilman's point is that companies, just like guys, tend to value what they have to work for. She even says, just like guys don't value women they can hook up with real fast, companies tend to believe you're more valuable if you've been harder to get.
Wow, that's a bold statement. But I see what she's getting at. It's about shifting the power dynamic.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's about knowing your worth and negotiating from a position of strength.
Okay, now Gilman doesn't just focus on personal experiences. She also takes on the media landscape. She's pretty critical of the way women are portrayed in movies and TV.
Oh, yeah. She goes after everything from those stereotypical wisp in a slip dress characters
Right.
to the predictability of those cheesy rom-coms.
And even the way reality TV is so gender segregated.
It's like, come on, can't we have some more complex, interesting female characters?
Right. So what's her solution? What does she want us to do about it?
Well, instead of just complaining, she says we need to imagine and discuss alternative stories. Stories that break free from those tired old tropes.
I love that. Taking ownership of the narrative.
Exactly. She even throws out some hilarious movie ideas of her own.
Like what?
Like The Weapon. It's got Queen Latifah as a special agent saving Paris from a neo-Nazi cult.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
Right. And she's got her witty white sidekick. So it's turning that whole buddy cop genre on its head.
I'd watch that in a heartbeat.
Oh, me too. And then there's Speed Rachel.
Tell me about Speed Rachel.
So it's this badass gay race car driver who just blows away the competition.
So she's defying gender stereotypes and sexual orientation stereotypes all at once.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming those genres that have traditionally excluded women, and especially strong, unconventional women.
I love it. And it all comes back to that idea of having choices, having a voice.
Absolutely. It's about shaping the culture, creating the kind of media we want to see. And that actually leads us to another area where Gilman takes a bold stance. Religion.
Okay. Yeah, religion can be a bit of a minefield.
It can be, but she jumps right in. Starts with a humorous take on Eve, getting a bad rap in the Garden of Eden.
Ah, yes, Eve, the original scapegoat.
Right. But Gilman points out that thanks to Eve, we have free will. We have the ability to think for ourselves.
Okay, that's a good point. It's a different way of looking at it, for sure. But she goes deeper than that, right?
Yeah. She argues that women have let conservative voices dominate the conversation about religion for way too long.
And she wants us to fight back.
She does. She says we need to fight fire with fire. Use biblical interpretations to support progressive causes.
So, for example?
Well, she talks about countering anti-choice arguments with commandments about honoring mothers.
That's interesting. Using the very texts that have been used to oppress women to argue for their rights.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming that religious discourse. And she even says if a used car salesman can exploit religion for profit, surely women can use it to promote human rights and equality.
It's a powerful statement. It's about taking back control, refusing to be silenced.
Exactly. And it ties into her overall message of empowerment, challenging the status quo, and being bold enough to speak your truth.
Now, Gilman doesn't just talk about big picture issues. She gets really practical, too. She has a whole section on smart mouth self-defense.
Oh, yeah. This is where she gives advice on how to deal with harassment and sexism in everyday life.
So what kind of advice does she give?
Well, she suggests things like harassing the harasser right back, or using the word commitment to scare off unwanted advances.
Commitment. How does that work?
Well, she says a lot of guys who are just looking for a quick hookup will run for the hills if you start talking about commitment. It's like a repellent.
That's hilarious, but also kind of brilliant. And what about sarcasm? I feel like she's a big fan of sarcasm.
Oh, absolutely. She sees it as a weapon, a way to deflect those sexist comments and put people in their place.
It's about being witty and sharp and not letting those comments slide.
Exactly. And she also emphasizes the importance of personal safety.
Yeah.
Knowing when to walk away from a situation that feels unsafe.
Right. It's about using your voice, but also protecting yourself.
Exactly. And this leads us to another important part of Gilman's message. Finding your own definition of success and happiness.
It's so easy to get caught up in those societal expectations. Get married, have kids climb the corporate ladder.
Right. But Gilman challenges that whole idea. She says there's no one right way to live your life.
And she even makes fun of those so-called formulas for happiness.
Like the whole idea that you have to get married young and have kids right away, or that you should focus on your career first and then worry about family later.
She's saying both paths have their challenges and neither one guarantees you'll be happy.
Exactly. It's about making choices that align with your own values and priorities.
And being okay with the fact that those choices might change over time.
Exactly. Life is messy and unpredictable. And she reminds us that happiness is a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's about embracing the ups and downs. And she has that great quote from Eddie Murphy.
Oh, yeah, when he was asked if he was happy, now that he's rich and famous. And he said happiness comes and goes.
It's so true. It's a reminder that even those who seem to have it all still experience those natural ebbs and flows of life.
Exactly. And it all comes back to that idea of finding your own path, defining success on your own terms, and embracing the journey. And speaking of journeys, I think it's time we take a little break. We'll be back in a moment to continue our deep dive into the world of Susan Jane Gilman.
Sounds good to me. We'll be right back.
You know, another thing that struck me about Gilman's advice was that whole section on navigating office politics. It's like there's this whole other set of rules.
Oh, it's so true. It's like a secret code. You're expected to know it, but nobody ever actually tells you what it is.
Exactly. And it can be especially tricky for women, I think. You're trying to navigate this world that was designed by men for men.
Right. So how do you succeed without, losing yourself in the process?
Well, Gilman gives some really good advice about observing your colleagues, paying attention to the power dynamics, figuring out the unspoken rules.
It's like being a workplace anthropologist.
It is. It's about being strategic and intentional, not just trying to fit into a mold that doesn't work for you.
And Gilman doesn't shy away from talking about the more difficult stuff, either like sexism and harassment in the workplace.
Oh, no, she goes right there. She has that whole section on smart mouth self-defense.
Where she gives those awesome tips like harassing the harasser.
Oh, yeah. That one's a classic. And using the word commitment to scare off unwanted advances.
Commitment. That's so funny. Does it actually work?
She swears by it. She says a lot of guys are just looking for a quick fling, and if you start talking about commitment, they run for the hills.
That's brilliant. And of course, there's the power of sarcasm.
Oh, yes. Sarcasm is definitely one of her favorite weapons.
It's about being witty and sharp and not letting those comments slide.
Exactly.
Mm.
But she also emphasizes the importance of personal safety. Knowing when to disengage from a situation that feels dangerous.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. Using your voice, but also protecting yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into her overall message about finding your own definition of success and happiness.
Right. Because it's so easy to get caught up in those societal expectations. Get married, have kids, climb the corporate ladder, like that's the only path to happiness.
And Gilman's like, nope, not buying it.
Exactly. She's like, throw out the rule book.
She really challenges that whole idea that there's one right way to live your life.
And she even pokes fun at those formulas for happiness.
Oh, yeah. Like the whole get married young and have kids thing, or focus on your career first and then think about family later. It's like, those are just two options out of a million.
And neither one guarantees you'll be happy.
Exactly. It's about making choices that are right for you. And be open to the possibility that those choices might change over time.
And she reminds us that happiness is a journey, not a destination.
I love that quote. It's about embracing the ups and downs. And she quotes Eddie Murphy about this too.
Oh, yeah. He was asked if he was happy now that he was rich and famous. And he basically said, happiness comes and goes.
It's a good reminder that even those who seem to have it all still experience those natural ebbs and flows of life.
Absolutely. So it all comes back to finding your own path, defining success on your own terms, and being okay with the fact that life is messy and unpredictable.
Exactly. And embracing that messiness. And speaking of embracing things, I think Gilman's take on the media is so important. She's really critical of the way women are portrayed in movies and TV.
Oh, yeah. She's not holding back there either.
No, she's not. She calls out those stereotypical characters, the ones who are just there to be eye candy or to support the male characters.
Like the wisp in a slip dress.
Exactly. And those predictable rom-coms. It's like, can't we have something a little more original, a little more complex?
Right. She's pushing for more diverse and nuanced portrayals of women.
Yes. And instead of just complaining, she says we need to imagine and create different stories. Stories that break free from those tired old tropes.
I love that. It's about taking ownership of the narrative, being the change you want to see.
Exactly. And she even throws out some hilarious movie ideals of her own.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like The Weapon. It's got Queen Latifah as a special agent, saving Paris from a neo-Nazi cult.
Okay, now that sounds amazing.
Right. And she's got her witty white sidekick. So it's kind of a buddy cop movie, but with a twist.
I would watch that in a heartbeat.
Me too.
Yeah.
And then there's Speed Rachel. She's this badass gay race car driver who just dominates the competition.
Defying all kinds of stereotypes.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming those genres that have traditionally been dominated by men.
And showing that women can be just as tough, just as funny, just as complex.
Exactly. It's about expanding the possibilities for women in media. And it's not just about Hollywood. Gilman encourages us to be more critical of all forms of media, to seek out content that reflects our own values and experiences.
And to create our own content.
Yeah.
To tell our own stories.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of the narrative. And speaking of taking control, Gilman has some interesting things to say about religion as well.
Yeah, religion can be a tricky subject.
It can be, but Gilman dives right in. Starts with a humorous take on Eve,
Right.
getting a bad rap in the Garden of Eden.
Eve, the original rebel.
Right. But Gilman suggests that maybe Eve's act of defiance was actually a gift. It gave us free will, the ability to think for ourselves.
Okay. That's an interesting way to look at it, but she goes beyond that, right?
Oh, yeah. She argues that women have let conservative voices dominate the conversation about religion for far too long. And she wants us to fight back, to reclaim that space.
So how do we do that?
She says we need to fight fire with fire. Use biblical texts and religious arguments to support progressive causes.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. She talks about using passages about honoring mothers to counter anti-choice arguments. It's about taking those texts that have been used to oppress women and reinterpreting them through a feminist lens.
That's brilliant. It's about reclaiming the narrative.
Exactly. And she even goes as far as to say that if a used car salesman can exploit religion for profit, surely women can use it to promote human rights and equality.
It's a powerful statement. It's about taking back control, refusing to be silenced.
Exactly. And I think it speaks to her overall message of empowerment, challenging the status quo, and being bold enough to speak your truth, even in spaces that have traditionally been dominated by men.
It's about finding your voice and using it.
Yes. Recognizing that your voice matters. And speaking of voices, I think it's important to highlight Gilman's emphasis on the power of sisterhood and community.
Oh, absolutely. She talks a lot about finding your tribe, the women who support you and challenge you and lift you up.
Exactly. It's about creating those safe spaces where women can be vulnerable and share their experiences without judgment.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to go it alone.
Exactly. And she also talks about the importance of travel as a tool for empowerment.
Oh, yes. Travel can be so transformative, especially for women.
She argues that it can be a way to experience freedom and independence, to challenge those cultural norms that restrict women's movements.
In many parts of the world, women are still discouraged from traveling alone or even venturing out without a male escort.
And Gilman's like, screw that. She's all about pushing those boundaries, expanding our horizons, and showing the world that women can go anywhere and do anything.
I love that. It's about claiming our space in the world.
Exactly. And you know what's amazing is that even though her book was written over 15 years ago, her message feels more relevant than ever.
It does, doesn't it?
The world has changed in a lot of ways, but the challenges women face are still very real.
Sexism, harassment, pay inequity, the pressure to conform to unrealistic beauty standards, it's all still there.
It's a reminder that the fight for equality is ongoing.
But Gilman's work also offers hope. She reminds us that we have the power to create change.
To challenge the status quo, to build a better world for ourselves and for future generations.
And she does it all with such a great sense of humor.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things I love about her writing. She can be serious and insightful, but she never loses that sense of playfulness, that wit.
It's like she's saying, hey, this stuff is important. We can still have a good laugh along the way.
Exactly. And I think that's such an important message, especially for women. We don't have to be serious all the time to be taken seriously.
Right. We can be fierce and joyful. We can fight for what we believe in and still find moments of levity and connection.
And I think that's a really powerful combination.
It is.
And Gilman's book is full of practical advice, like how to deal with a harasser or how to negotiate a raise. But I think one of the most valuable things she offers is a shift in perspective.
She encourages us to question those societal norms and expectations, to start defining success and happiness on our own terms.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to life, and that what works for one woman might not work for another.
It's about giving ourselves permission to be different, to be unconventional, to create our own unique path.
Exactly. and embracing our individuality. And, even though Gilman's work has sometimes been criticized for focusing primarily on the experiences of white middle-class women, I think her message of empowerment resonates with women from all backgrounds.
I agree. The challenges women face may manifest differently depending on our race, class, sexual orientation, and other factors, but the underlying systems of oppression are often the same,
It's about recognizing that the fight for equality is intersectional.
and that we need to work together to dismantle those systems that hold all women back.
Exactly. It's about building bridges of solidarity and recognizing that our liberation is bound up with each other.
So out of everything we've talked about, what stood out to you the most? What really resonated with you?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think for me, it's Gilman's call to action. She doesn't just want us to read her book and nod our heads in agreement. She wants us to get out there and do something, to make a difference.
I love that. It's about taking action, putting those feminist principles into practice.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have the power to create a more just and equitable world. But it's up to us to use that power.
To be the change we want to see.
Exactly. And Gilman's book is full of those funny anecdotes and witty observations. But I think one of the most powerful things she offers is a vision of a world where women are truly free to be themselves.
A world where women aren't limited by societal expectations, where they can pursue their passions, embrace their sexuality, and lead fulfilling lives on their own terms.
And she challenges us to not just dream of that world, but to actively work towards creating it.
To make it a reality.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that change is possible. But it requires our unwavering commitment and our willingness to fight for what we believe in.
And sometimes that means taking risks, stepping outside of our comfort zones.
Gilman reminds us that the personal is political, that every choice we make, every action we take can be a form of resistance.
It's about reclaiming our power in those everyday moments.
And using that power to chip away at the patriarchy, brick by brick.
She encourages us to be bold, to be fearless,
Look,
and to never underestimate the power of our collective voices.
it's about recognizing that we're not alone, that we're part of a powerful movement for change,
Yeah.
and that together we can create a world where all women are free to live their lives to the fullest.
It's so inspiring to think about that world, the one where women are truly free from those expectations and limitations. But it's also important to acknowledge that the path to get there isn't always going to be easy.
Oh, absolutely. It's not all sunshine and roses.
There are going to be setbacks and challenges along the way.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Gilman acknowledges that. Those moments of doubt and frustration are inevitable.
But she doesn't want us to see those moments as failures.
No, not at all. She sees them as opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
For resilience.
It's about reframing those challenges, seeing them as part of the journey.
Exactly. And she emphasizes the importance of finding support systems.
Like friends, family therapy.
Right, or even spiritual communities. It's about recognizing that we don't have to go through this alone.
It's okay to ask for help when you need it.
Absolutely. And it's also important to celebrate those victories along the way, even the small ones.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. It's easy to get caught up in the fight and forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
Exactly. Gilman reminds us that every step forward, every boundary we break, is a cause for celebration.
It's about finding those moments of joy amidst the struggle.
Yes. And using them to fuel our continued efforts. Now, we've talked about a lot of big picture stuff,
We have.
but I think it's important to remember that Gilman's message of empowerment isn't just about grand gestures or revolution.
It's about those everyday choices.
Exactly. Those seemingly small actions that can actually make a big difference.
Like what?
Like calling out a sexist joke.
Right.
Or supporting women-owned businesses.
Yeah.
Or simply refusing to conform to those narrow definitions of what it means to be a woman.
It's about recognizing that we have power even in those small moments.
And using that power to challenge the status quo, to chip away at the patriarchy.
Brick by brick. I love that image.
It's a process. And it's not always going to be easy.
But it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. And ultimately, I think Gilman's work is a call to embrace our authentic selves.
Flaws and all.
Yes, she encourages us to be bold, to be fearless, and to never underestimate the power of our voices.
And our collective action.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we can create real change when we come together and fight for what we believe in.
Well said. So to wrap things up, for anyone listening who wants to learn more about Gilman's unique perspective on female empowerment,
Her book, Kiss My Tiara, is a great place to start.
it's funny, insightful, and full of practical advice.
And it'll definitely leave you feeling empowered.
and inspired to create change.
And remember, the journey to equality is a marathon, not a sprint.
There will be times when you feel discouraged or overwhelmed.
Oh, for sure.
But on those days, remember Gilman's words, stand tall, don't take any shit, and have a good laugh.
That's perfect advice.
It is. It's about finding that balance between being fierce and joyful.
And remembering that we can fight for what we believe in while still having a sense of humor.
And that's a beautiful thing.